Hello and welcome to another edition of Las Vegas Pitch Presents. We have an awesome guest today, Ray Rodriguez with Monumental Estates. And I am so intrigued by this conversation. I cannot wait to get into it. It's great to see young people entering into the industry, and you guys have really come in with a bang. How did you get started with Monumental? What was kind of the thought process behind it?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story, but to make it brief, I was in college and I was doing a lot of side hustles at the time. Cutting hair, painting sneakers, buying Jordans and reselling them.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah, so that was how I just kind of lived in college. And during the pandemic, my girlfriend, my fiance now, but at the time we were just like dating, she sent me this TikTok that she saw of some guy talking about how you can get into real estate investing without any money and like all these things. So it kind of sparked my interest. I started mentoring underneath somebody, and then I just kind of went off and did my own thing afterwards.
So, and how old are you?
I'm 24.
24. And he has just absolutely been crushing it out there. You've made some amazing sales. Now, do you think your background, so let's talk about, I was noticing the hat, PR.
Yep.
And it's Puerto Rico, right?
Absolutely.
And so tell us a little bit about your upbringing, when you got here, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so when my parents came to the United States, Puerto Rico is a part of the United States, but when my parents came to Las Vegas, they did not speak any English. So growing up, I did not learn English until I went to school, because at home we would only speak Spanish, and my grandmother moved out here as well. So she only spoke Spanish as well, and then my parents were at work. She would take care of me. Everything felt kind of normal to me up until I went to school, and then I realized that they were saying all these words that I wasn't really familiar with or anything. Yeah, because and then I started watching like cartoons in English to kind of learn a little bit more. Because at home all we watched was this Spanish show called Caso Cerrado, which is basically like a Spanish Judge Judy. So I'm like 3 years old, kind of eating some baby food, watching Spanish Judge Judy out there. And so I'm like, all right, well, my parents, I think they made a great choice kind of having me watch cartoons and go to school to learn English out here. I think I picked up on that pretty quickly. I don't recall it really being much of a struggle. Just been bilingual ever since, and never really thought much of it. I never felt like I was like at a disadvantage language wise or anything like that. And in my household, for the most part, we really just speak Spanish to one another.
And still to this day?
Yeah, do my parents speak English now? Yes, but it's more like, I don't want to say a challenge for them to speak it, but it doesn't come as naturally as just speaking Spanish does. Right. And so we'll just speak Spanish at home. It's pretty easy for all of us. So we'll just speak Spanish at home, and that's pretty much it.
So do you think your upbringing has kind of promoted your drive and desire to succeed, survive, have that entrepreneur? How does your upbringing bring you into this business?
I definitely think my parents have always been the kind of people that pushed me to go after whatever. Kind of tough to compare to anything else, since I guess people only have one upbringing ever. But yeah, I would definitely say just coming from a family, a culture that doesn't really come from too much. Like anyone who's watching this that's Hispanic probably has a parent who's told them like, oh, I used to have to walk like miles to get to school, or maybe not even like Hispanic people. I'm sure non-Hispanic people might have a similar story as well. But my parents certainly say stories like that to me all the time. So I think, in my opinion, it'd kind of be disrespectful if I just chose to be lazy after that. My mom was born in Colombia, moved to Puerto Rico, then like met my dad, they moved to Las Vegas and whatnot. So I think it'd be kind of disrespectful on my behalf if I decided to just be video games in my parents' basement, in my 20s and whatnot. So I'm just working hard, but I enjoy it too. I don't feel like I'm having to do this. I just I genuinely enjoy it, and I think I don't know, but even if I would have been born into like a rich family, I genuinely believe I'd still have the same work ethic, because I think a lot of it was just the values that my parents instilled in me, and not so much like the money they had or did not have. So that's my 2 cents on that, but we'll see.
I love it. Well, because you've been doing this now, real estate, for how long?
Coming up on 4 years now.
4 years. Yeah. And then the number of transactions that you've done over the last probably 4 years.
It's a little under like 160.
It's 160 transactions. That's more than like most realtors do sometimes in a career. So in 4 years, 4 short years, that's pretty incredible.
No, I appreciate it.
And what is it like being a real estate investor here in Las Vegas? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I'm always looking to buy discounted real estate. So typically anything that's at a 25% discount, I'll probably end up buying that. What's it like? It feels just like any normal day for the most part, to be honest. You know, you wake up, you have a job to do. And I mean, that's truly it. I think there's some stuff that's pretty cool. It's really cool when neighbors come up to you and say, hey, thanks for buying that ugly home and fixing it up. It's, you know, I like a lot of it, such as getting to meet cool people like yourself or Robert. So there's a lot of really cool aspects to it. There's a lot that I don't like, such as when I lose money on a house, or when, you know, like when things don't go the way we want them to, such as if we have a property, knock on wood, that's about to hit the market and then it gets broken into. It's like, oh my gosh, now you got to send your construction team back out there. It's going to cost more money. Overall, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to any job or any business, and I really like what I do. Of course, it has its downsides, kind of how we mentioned, but that's just like anything, you know.
Any business has.
Yeah, so I enjoy it though. I mean, you never know what the future holds, but I don't see myself ever not doing real estate investing.
Right.
Even if I ever do something else, I don't ever see myself just completely leaving this. So, but we'll see. I mean, maybe somebody will clip this later on. It's like, oh, you're, I don't know.
Or you're just going to build this program for everybody to just kind of follow in your footsteps and just create a business that way, which is what you're doing now. I mean,
like a coaching program or something like that. I don't have
not necessarily a coaching program, but teaching them how to do what you do, and then them following and just looking for opportunities.
Yes.
But before we get into that, describe kind of what you do with buying a house. When you go out and you're looking for a house, you're looking for it to buy and then eventually sell fairly quickly. Is that correct?
Yes.
So describe when you go find a house, what does that entail?
Yeah, so we're always looking for deals, and kind of what a deal is, I briefly touched on it. It's a house that we can buy at roughly at least a 25% discount, maybe a little bit less if it's small, it doesn't really need a lot of work, but typically 25 to 35% discount is what we're looking for. So let's say, for example, a house, it's all the comps are at 400,000. A 25% discount is, you know, that's going to put you at 300. So we'll probably need it realistically around like 280 to 290. So we have a property under contract at $280,000. All the comps in the area, they've all sold for 400,000. So now we need $280,000. How are we going to find that money? Well, I've networked with a lot of people over the years to find people with money that are willing to invest in the company. So I'll call one of them up. I'll get $280,000 from them plus however much I need for the renovation. So let's say $40,000, maybe a couple more for closing costs. So between the purchase price, the closing costs, and the renovation, we'll spend like $325 or so. Then we'll have one of our flat fee realtors listed at $400,000, and since all the comps are at $400,000, we should get that. And that's pretty much how the process goes. That's honestly it. Just find a deal, find the money, find a contractor to take care of it, and then find a realtor, and you're done.
So what's the typical way to find a property? Is it just, you know, looking online? Is it just calling people? Is it what is it?
Yeah, so there's a ton of ways. That is certainly a method. The most traditional way would be direct to seller marketing, which is you either run ads on Google, you mail the homeowners, you cold call them, you cold text them, you knock on their door. Any of that stuff, that's very traditional, like real estate investing. I've done a good amount of that. I mean, from January to June of this year, we spent 50 grand a month just on that kind of marketing. We're spending like 20 grand a month on Google ads, another like 10 grand a month direct mailing people. But what's always been our bread and butter has been getting deals from realtors and from the MLS. So we'll network with a ton of realtors. We'll make a ton of offers on the MLS. It's free. And typically, whenever someone needs to sell you their house at a huge discount, you really hope and pray that they're never in that situation again. Because it's not people who just hit the lottery that sell their house for a discount. It's people that they need to sell, such as, I mean, we just got a call on Monday. Today's Tuesday. This lady, she's going to get foreclosed on Friday.
Oh.
And the lender's not willing to extend the foreclosure. I guess they've extended it like 6 different times already. And the realtor's just giving me a call now saying, hey, this is the story. The lender's saying that they will not continue extending on them, even if they have a purchase agreement. Like, there's no negotiating with the lender right now.
They have to close, fund, record,
exactly everything. And so we can do that. I mean, if title can close it, so can we. But she knows she's not going to sell it for top dollar. And apparently the seller's really happy because she'd rather get a couple $100,000 than nothing, because she doesn't owe much on the home. She owes like 40 or 50,000, which is
okay.
Yeah, she's been
so
paying
she'll come out of it at least positive and not lose everything.
Right. And so those are typically the kind of sellers that we work with. And realtors call us when there's a situation like that. From my understanding, I think that's only 4% of all transactions sell in a situation like that. So we're definitely not for everyone. We're not for most people. But whenever someone's in a pinch, they need to sell quickly. I mean, we just helped a lady this summer where she was in her 90s, and her daughter, who was in her 60s, gave us a call. She said, hey, my mother, this is her situation. She's already had a couple of heat strokes, or that might not be the proper term, but something that the doctor said that if it happened again in the Vegas sun, her organs might shut down. So they needed to sell quickly and move to the Midwest, where they're originally from. So we bought their house really quickly. We closed in, I think, 2 weeks is what they wanted. I paid for packers and movers to pack everything up, load it into a U-Haul truck. We paid for the U-Haul truck, and we paid for someone to drive it from Vegas to the Midwest. And so they were happy. They know that they sold it at like a 25-30% discount, but they got the money that they needed out of it to go buy a house in the Midwest. They got the house sold quickly as is, no repairs, no appraisals, no loan contingencies, none of that, none of that stuff. And they're happy. So we're not for most people, but those are the kinds of sellers and that we're looking for. And realtors know that, or the realtors who know us, that they know that that's what we're looking for. So they'll call us whenever there's an opportunity there to help the seller and get us the house we're looking for as well.
So opportunities that pop up by doing what you do on a regular basis, a lot of the realtors will go to you, or somebody will know who you are and go, oh, I have a situation, and then you step in and see if if it works.
Exactly.
So it's by happenstance at times too.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. So how fast can you close on a loan? What or not on a loan, on a home?
Wow, I can tell you really do this. You really do this. Yeah. I mean, technically the same day. Has that ever happened? No. But as far as like financing it goes, we can, if someone has a deal right now, we can have funds in like 30 minutes. So it's we can technically close pretty quickly, but realistically, we'd at least want to look at the house like really quick, or so, which can also be done in a day. We'll take a look at comps. That doesn't take more than like 10 minutes, maybe like 20 minutes if I'm really going to underwrite every little detail. The fastest we've closed on a house, I mean, we've closed on 3 different homes in 3 days, on a few different occasions now. We could technically do it faster, but we've also closed on homes in 90 days, 180 days. There's been situations where, I mean, we've had probate situations where it takes a while, or even non-probate situations where, for whatever reason, the seller prefers a longer close. I mean, we bought a lady's house who her son was in prison, and she didn't want to close until he got out. She had a whole bunch of reasons for that, but that took 3 or 4 months to close. So, I mean, we could technically close something in a day, but the fastest we've closed has been in like 3 days.
3 days. And with the market the way it is right now, inventory starting to rise a little bit.
Right.
Some of the interest rates started to rise too. Do you see more opportunities coming up for sellers that may be in trouble because of what's going on in the market? Or do you think the market is pretty stable right now and it's just a one-off situation, happenstance? Yeah,
so here's what I've seen, and you brought up a great point with rising inventory. So we have a couple of flips in certain neighborhoods, whereas if we would have bought those flips 8 months ago, by the time we listed them, there probably would have been maybe one other active, if that. But right now, there's, in some of these neighborhoods that we have houses in, there's 10 or 12 actives. And so from talking to all the agents selling these homes, some of those sellers are getting a little bit more desperate, a little bit more motivated when they're not getting the amount of showings or offers that they were hoping that they would get. So some of them are calling us saying, hey, we'd be willing to entertain like some sort of investor cash offer right now. So yeah, we're certainly seeing a lot more opportunities to buy, but that also doesn't mean we're going crazy with what we're buying right now either, because we understand in just a few months, we're going to be that seller who's on the market waiting for people to come around and make an offer. So we are buying around the same amount as we've always been, but we do need the exact same properties a little bit cheaper now, because we know when we're putting them on the market, we're going to have to be a lot more lenient with giving the buyers closing costs, or maybe not getting as much as we wanted for the property. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It might be a little bit easier for us to pick up a deal, but you might be overpaying. So you got to be a little bit careful. So not much has changed for us. We're buying homes a little bit more conservatively now because we know we have to be more conservative on what we're going to resell them for. But fortunately, I mean, we haven't lost money on anything this year.
That's a positive. That's really good.
We've had like 2 or 3 break evens, and I mean, I'll take a break even all day over losing money.
So describe a flip. How would you describe what a flip is, just for the audience?
Yeah, for me, a flip is a property that you buy, you renovate, and you resell. That's
so
a
it
flip
flips over.
Yeah, you flip the condition. You turn it from whatever condition it was in to looking like a brand new, modern 2024 product.
And then you go in, you do the construction on it, and your dad is right helping. He's part of your team to go in and do the construction, correct?
Right. So I think that's something really cool. So when I was in high school, I mean, I graduated 6 years ago, but most of my time in high school, my dad had started a car flipping business, because he was a chef in Vegas for 25 years. And for like the last 15 years of his career as a chef, he was a manager at all the restaurants that he worked at. And he worked at a few different big hotels here in town. And they would just move him from one hotel to another, just kind of being a manager. So he worked at over 25 years in like 4 different hotels, and he was a manager at 3 of them. And so he ended up not doing too much more with the car flipping after the pandemic, but he was an Uber driver for a couple of years. And I felt like he had the perfect personality to be a construction manager. He didn't know anything about construction, and I knew very little. So I actually hired a guy who knows a ton about this, and who actually has that exact same role. He's a project manager or a construction manager for a different house flipper here in town. And so I hired him to teach my dad what to do, because my dad already had the right personality for it. He has managerial experience. And I mean, just from being his son, he's not a guy to mess with. If, you're not gonna give him a BS excuse, why you're late or why the job isn't done. He doesn't play those games. And on top of that, all of our construction workers, they're all Hispanic. In fact, I don't even know if they speak English at all. And so my dad, mainly just speaking Spanish and just kind of having that manager personality, I felt like if he knew about construction, he'd be the right guy, the perfect guy. And so the guy that I hired to teach him had already done over 1,000 construction managements for other flippers. And so I figured he would be a great guy to learn from. And I mean, that theory paid off.
And it's worked out really well, right?
So my dad manages the construction on every single house that we buy. And the other day, ironically, we were chatting with the guy who taught him a lot. Shout out to Daniel. And Daniel was saying that my dad is 10 years ahead of where he was when he started just a few years ago. So grateful for Daniel and my dad, they've been a tremendous help to me for sure.
Yeah, well, your dad's a wonderful man for sure. And he's done a great job. And, the organization is so key in doing that, because the efficiencies of getting the property together so that you can put it back on the market and you're not holding it for a long period of time, that construction side really comes into play.
Oh yeah, it's super important. So he's graded on 2 things. Is the project done on time, and is it done on budget? And the reason for that, we close cash, but it's not all my cash hanging out in the bank account. Mm-hmm. I'm borrowing money from people, and we're typically paying a 12% interest. And so, or 12% annualized interest. So every single day, depending on how much cash you're borrowing, it can be $100 to a couple $100 every single day. So if the project takes, an extra 2 months, that's an extra 2% in interest that you're paying. So if you were borrowing, let's say, $300,000, 2 months, it's an extra $6,000 just in interest. That's all
That's
interest.
just cutting
None of that.
into
Yeah.
the
And
profit.
the loans are interest only. So every single payment that you make, you still owe that same principal of $300,000. And like you said very well, it's cutting into the profit. And there's a return I want to make. There's people on my team I have to pay out. And then if the project goes over budget, let's say it goes $5,000 over budget, and it takes 2 months longer than expected, I mean, that's $11,000 right there. And if you thought you were going to make, let's say, $25,000 on a property, but now the market's slower, you got to, sell it for a little bit less, or you got to give up closing costs. You start getting really close to that break even very quickly. So I will say though, I've never had that issue with my dad. He's always gotten everything done really fast. He treats the business as if it were his own, and I can truly say
can
that
trust
confidently.
him,
Yeah,
right?
I can trust him,
Which is huge.
I can say that confidently.
Yeah.
I mean, he treats it as if it was his own money. I can say the same thing about like any of the guys on my team, even if they don't have any skin in the game. They treat the company as if they had all the skin in the game. So I'm really grateful not only for my dad, but everyone on the team. They all really treat the company as if it were their baby.
So let's talk about your fun team, because they're really a dynamic group.
Yeah.
And how did you find them on your team? And what do you look for in that type of person to be on your team?
Yeah, those are great questions. So some of them I just went to school with. So my admin, Isabella, we went to middle school together. So I've known her for like 13 years.
Was she the valedictorian?
Yeah, she was a valedictorian. I always bring
Yep.
that up. Yeah, so she was our valedictorian. So I would copy her homework in middle school. Yeah. And in a funny way, that's kind of what I do now. I didn't invent real estate investing. I just copied what was working for some other people and kind of put my own twist on things. So that's how I know her. Jerry, I know him from high school. We weren't super close friends in high school. I would say acquaintances is a better word. But we ended up kind of reconnecting. I want to say I had already been doing this business for 2 years, and then I made a posting. I was looking to hire my first person, and he applied, and I thought he was a good fit. And I mean, it's been 2.5 years now, and he's still on the team, and he just got promoted on Friday. So not even a week ago. He has like a higher base salary now, and more responsibility, and a couple other cool things as well. And then who else do we? I mean, another guy, friend of a friend, Xavier, he came through Indeed.
Best hair in the business.
Yeah. Literally. So right before he was hired, I told him, I was like, hey, if you have the job. No, right when we hired him, I told him, hey, you automatically have the best hair in all of real estate. And then it's kind of funny. A few weeks later, Greg at your event, he goes up to speak and he points out Xavier and he goes, that guy has the best hair in all of real estate. And I'm like, wow, I feel like I foreshadowed something here. So I love Xavier. We found him on, he saw a post we made on Indeed and he reached out and he turned out to be the best fit. I mean, we were looking at people from our own network, and he was just a way better fit than anybody. And then my dad, I mean, kind of obvious. I was born from him and my mom, so that's kind of how that's our team really. Now to your second question of what do we kind of look for in a candidate? The most important thing for me is you have to fit the company's core values. So our core values are gratefulness, gratitude, selflessness, 1% better, and hustle. So if you fit those 4 things and you have a desire to learn the business, we can make something work. The whole team is just a team of hustlers. I only require people to work from 9 to 5, but I don't think there's anyone on the team that only works those hours. In fact, there used to be a guy on the team who I let him go after about a year, and it wasn't because he wasn't like hustling like everybody else. It was we caught him like falsifying some stuff, and that was a big no-go. But anyway, the team was getting a little bit was telling me that they were starting to feel a little bit annoyed with him because even though he was working his 9 to 5, the culture had kind of grown to something of like, we work as much as we can around here. And I never got mad at that guy because I set the expectations with him when he was hired that, hey, you work from 9 to 5. If you want to work more than that, you can, but that's not required of you. And so the team, I don't want to say they were mad at him, but they were certainly feeling like, hey, he's not pulling as much weight as the rest of us are. And I mean, he ended up getting fired for some other stuff, but now we've implemented like hustle into like the core values, and everyone, I mean, besides one person, no one has any kids, or I guess technically like my dad has a kid. I'm the kid, but not like any little kids
You're an
running
older
around.
kid, yeah.
I'm a self-sufficient kid, I guess. They don't need to change my diapers anymore. But,
well, team culture is huge, right?
Yeah.
So having that same culture and people drinking, you know, the same Kool-Aid,
yeah.
whatever you want to call it, is good. And then the thing that I love too is you are not afraid. And I think we talked a little bit before we came on about experience. You know, I got a lot versus not like a number of years. But I think that actually works to your benefit because you don't know what can, you know, really happen.
Right. Exactly.
And you just have no fear to go through it.
Exactly.
And I think people that have a lot of experience sometimes are like, oh man, if I do the day, it's too cautious.
No, exactly. And when I first started just making cold calls to realtors a few years ago, I didn't know who anybody was. I mean, I would cold call like the top agents in town. Not because I was like, oh, let me, you know, go for the top people, but because I would just go on Zillow and I wanted to call on certain listings, and naturally the people who are the top agents are the top agents because they have a lot of listings. So I would just see, you know, like this house I would call, and turns out like this is like, you know, like number 2 realtor in like all of Vegas, and you're offering them like $300,000 on a house that they're listed for like $500,000, right? And so you know, you got to offer what works for you. But to your point, a lot of the days now you have more experience, more knowledge. People might not be as open to calling like the number 1 guy, number 1 gal, and making them like an offer like that. You don't want to come off a certain way or whatnot, myself included, right? I might think twice before making a phone call like that. I mean, I have relationships with those guys now that a lot of them, you know, if they didn't send it to me, it's probably a retail customer of theirs. But yeah, you make a great point. I mean, sometimes like the less you know, the more you're just willing to put yourself out there.
The more you're going to hustle.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
So last words. Where do you think what's the market going to do in 2025? We've had a very kind of the number of transactions 2024 way down. Do you see it improving in 2025?
I mean, this is strictly just a guess. I do think it'll get a little bit better. I think rates will come down a tiny bit. That's really like the only thought that I have on it. I think when rates,
and you don't care. You're just looking for opportunities that
truthfully,
that
I mean,
fit your,
I really don't care. When I first started kind of 2020, 2021, and during that time period, we still had really low rates, and our flips were selling super fast. We'd list something at 350 and it would get 365, 370, 375 maybe. That's really not happening right now. But then summer of 22, when we saw a slowdown, we still did fine. I think I lost on 2 or 3 flips, and some of those were, you know, probably some of the bigger losses that we've had. But I think just analyzing what's going on in the market, I'm always more on the conservative side, even when I see things selling fast anyway. I never really buy it, or I very rarely will buy something just to gamble on it and see how it goes. So I think we'll be okay. I hope I don't have to eat those words later, but I think we'll be okay no matter what. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you in the industry. Best of luck
I appreciate
to you.
it. Thank you so much.
And
thank you, Bill.
that's it for today on Las Vegas Pitch Presents. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.